of your comfort zone. Staying with what is familiar keeps us within our comfort zone. Fitting in with what everybody else is doing keeps us safe. Nobody wants to be laughed at, rejected, sneered at, hurt for being different. So we adapt to the norm. We do what everybody else does to fit in. We present an acceptable self to the world in order to fit in. Let's say you work in a gung-ho corporate culture. Do you hide your gentle, emotional side and present an acceptable self that's hard and bullish in order to fit in with your colleagues' comfort zones? Perhaps you've listened to all these amazing TEDx speakers today, and you're inspired to start a campaign, speak out, write a book, make a difference, change the world. And then you hesitate because it all feels a bit scary and outside your comfort zone. And it's much safer to stay with what you're familiar with and carry on fitting in with what has always been. So how do you break through that hesitation? Step outside your comfort zone. The thing is, there's nothing wrong with fitting in. It can be a wonderful feeling to belong. Think of long, lazy Sunday lunches with all your friends and family gathered round. It can give our lives a lot of meaning, to be valued by our colleagues, to be part of a choir, a team, a movement. Fitting in is comfortable. It is safe. The problem comes when our acceptable self becomes a prison that keeps us trapped, and our comfort zone limits our lives. This is a story about what can happen when your acceptable self takes over and how we can set ourselves free. It was the 80s. Who here remembers the 80s? Yeah. And do you remember those big perms from the 80s? All the fashionable women had big hair, and I had big hair too. It took me 3 hours every month at the hairdresser to achieve that big power perm. And I had big earrings and big shoulder pads, and I looked like that Motown diva, Donna Summer. And I had a great job as a lawyer. I was down in London with all my friends, and we were in our 20s. We all had great jobs: lawyers, bankers, accountants. And I should have been happy. But it felt meaningless to me. It felt like a performance, and I was miserable. Yes, it was safe. Yes, it was well paid. And yes, it fit in with what my family and my parents wanted for me. But in my heart, I wanted to be a writer. But I wasn't writing. The fear said, "Your writing's no good." What if I poured my heart and soul into my writing, revealed myself in my stories, and the world laughed at them, rejected me? So it was much safer not to try at all. It was much safer to stay inside my comfort zone, successful and powerful as the big-haired lawyer behind my desk. It was the 80s, and I had big hair and beautiful clothes. And all my friends had boyfriends, they were getting married, they were having kids, and every time I met my Malaysian relations, they said, "When are you going to get married? When are you going to produce grandkids for your mum and your dad?" And I wanted to fit in. So I had a plan for a man. I had a boyfriend. Let's call him Toby. He was broad-shouldered, hunky. He was a rugby player. And he was a banker. He had the perfect CV to take home to Mum and Dad. One evening, we were outside on the balcony of my flat in Pimlico, and I had my beautiful clothes, and I was channeling Donna Summer. You know, that whole, love to love you, baby, thing. And he loved it. And he swooped me up in his arms, and he lifted me up, and he kissed me. And it was a perfect Hollywood moment. We had our audience down in the street in Pimlico, staring up agog at this beautiful, sexy couple. And I should have been happy. But all I wanted was to be loved for me and to love with all my heart. But I didn't believe that anyone would love the real me, the me who wanted to have short hair and run around in my sweatshirt and trainers and jeans, the scruffy tomboy me. Who would love that me? So it was much safer to let him love her, the acceptable, big-haired lawyer. It was the 80s, and I had big hair. And underneath that disguise, it felt like a prison. I had a terrible stammer. I had acne and chronic back pain, insomnia, and there were days when I didn't want to see anyone, and I would hide away in my flat and for days. Back then, I had a friend from uni. Let's call her Lizzie. And she was sweet and delightful. And she had this natural, fresh air style about her. She never wore makeup and was still gorgeous and had these beautiful blue-gray eyes. And whenever I hung out with Lizzie, I never bothered to do my hair. I just hung out in my sweatshirt and trainers and jeans, and I felt like a bit of a rebel against that acceptable big-haired lawyer that I usually presented to the world. And Lizzie encouraged me to write. So I tried writing poetry, but it was all earnest, turgid, embarrassing stuff. But Lizzie never laughed. She read each line carefully, and she believed in me as a writer. And it felt like an act of rebellion against that fear that said, you can't write. And Lizzie seemed to be one of those touchy-feely girls. She'd stroke my arm, stroke my back. She'd make daisy chains and weave them in my hair. And I loved her touch. And I touched her back. And the fear started. Dyke! Lizzie! Queer! You are disgusting. Thinking all these disgusting thoughts about this sweet, lovely girl. You are going to burn in hell. And I had seen it, how lesbians were treated out there in the world. They're laughed at, sneered at, given abuse. And I didn't want any of that. So it was much safer to stay inside my comfort zone, behind the disguise of the acceptable big-haired lawyer. We were in our 20s, so of course we talked about life and what we wanted for our futures. And one day I said, Lizzie, what would make you happy? And she started to cry. And I didn't understand. Lizzie, why are you crying? Please tell me. And she wouldn't or couldn't tell me. And then after that, every time we got together, and we'd be having this lovely, happy time together, and then she'd start to cry. And the more I asked her, and the more I was kind to her, the more she cried. And she wouldn't tell me or couldn't tell me. And then one day, she did tell me. She said, "I love you." She loves me. She loves me. And then the fear started. She doesn't love you like that. She loves you like a friend. You're disgusting the way that you're thinking about her. You want her too much. And so I spoilt it. I said, like a friend, "I love you too." And I spoilt it because I couldn't believe that someone like her could love someone like me. It must have taken her huge courage to say those words, and I spoilt it. She moved away. She moved away from me. She withdrew. She got a job abroad. She moved to Switzerland. And I was left alone with my big hair and the charade of my perfect life. But Lizzie had opened my heart, and even to admit to myself what I felt about her felt like an act of rebellion against those unwritten rules about who you should and shouldn't love. And suddenly fitting in didn't seem to matter so much anymore. We tried to save our friendship. We kept in touch, we phoned, we wrote, and then she invited me to visit her. So one spring weekend, I went to see her in Geneva, and we drove out of town and went for a walk in the countryside. And we were comfortable with each other again. And for the first time, I saw what my life could be like. To be with someone that I loved and who loved me, the real me, the scruffy tomboy me. And I liked myself when I was with Lizzie. I liked the me who was vulnerable, who was cheeky, who was silly, who was happy. I loved being the scruffy rebel in blue jeans and trainers. And we came to a meadow full of buttercups, and we had a picnic. And Lizzie lay back on the grass looking up at me. And I was stretched out beside her, leaning up on one elbow. And it was a perfect moment. It was not a big Hollywood moment, not a big hair moment. It was just the two of us, and it felt real. And looking down at her blue-grey eyes, there was only one thing I wanted to do. And the fear started. No, don't. If you do this, there's no going back. This is the ultimate act of rebellion against everything that you've tried to sustain all these years. Better to leave things as they are, and then nothing would change. And you could carry on fitting in, carry on just being friends. But on that beautiful spring day, there was only Lizzie and me and the buttercups. And I leaned in and I kissed her. And she kissed me back. And then she reached up and she ran her fingers through my hair, stroked my cheeks, and said my name over and over. And then she sat up. She said, "I don't want to be gay." She had loved me all this time, and now it was real. She could have everything that she longed for. And she said, "I don't want to be a lesbian." She put a label on us, and it was over. She said, "I want to be married. I want to have kids. I want to have a house in the suburbs. I want my family to accept me. I want society to accept me. And I can't have any of those things with you." And I had laid myself bare. We couldn't go back to being just friends, not after this. We couldn't go forward together. And I had lived in fear all this time of those labels. I'd been paralyzed for so long by these labels. And on that bright spring day, I thought, fuck the labels. I had to let the real me live. The me who could love, the me who could write, the me who was the rebel. And I had to go on with my life, even if it meant going on alone. So I had to leave Lizzie behind. That was 23 years ago. I did become a writer. I've published 2 novels and a business book with leading UK publishers. And my first novel became a bestseller in Malaysia. I left the law, and I now work part of the week with a profit-for-purpose enterprise funding affordable homes for people in need. And that gives my life meaning. I came out to my parents and to my family, and we are closer for it, because I can be real with them. My mum said, "You are my daughter. Whatever happens, I will always love you. I just worry that the path that you have chosen is a difficult one." And it has been difficult. Some people did say to me, "You will burn in hell." And once I was almost beaten up for being gay. The thing is, when you follow your rebel heart, there will be people who won't understand. And there will be people who will want to fit you back into their comfort zone. And I'd spent all this time and energy worrying about other people's comfort zones. And whether or not they accept me, I accept me. And when you have the love and support of family and friends, as I have been really lucky enough to have, that path can be a bit easier. And my stammer is gone. My acne cleared up, I hardly have backache, I sleep like a log, and it doesn't take me very long to do my hair these days. And I met my current partner, Angie, the love of my life. We've been together for 20 years, and we've been civil partnered for 5 years. We don't fit in, we belong. These days, we could be married, we could have kids, we have a house in the suburbs. We have friends and family round for long, lazy Sunday lunches. We don't fit in, we belong. And what about Lizzie? She withdrew from me all those years ago, but she also withdrew from all our friends. I tried to find her last year, but I couldn't. None of our friends knows where she is. I would love to see her, even if it was just for one moment. If she was standing here in front of me, I would say, "Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Because you loved me, because you had the courage to speak the truth, and because you let me go. You gave me the gift of myself." This is not about being gay or being straight. This is about small acts of rebellion that cumulatively can create powerful change. Small acts of rebellion take us to the edge of our comfort zone and beyond. Small acts of rebellion allow us to let go of our acceptable selves and grow into our most vulnerable, most creative, most powerful selves. Thank you.